Felt pretty confident going into this one, but just like BC has showed us all year long, they're not going to make anything easy. And in this time, everything sort of just fell apart.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On BC, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I'm joined today by Mitch Wolfe of Eagle Insider. BC falls to Pitt 24-16. Both Mitch and I picked BC to win this game, and there's a lot of reasons they lost this. Mitch, let's talk about it.
Man, I had a lot of things to say, and they kind of all just melded together so that I had nothing to come up with because this game is just awful from pretty much start to finish. Refs were terrible. BC was bad. And of course, there were glimmers of hope that make you think it might be possible, but at the end of the day, that just doesn't happen. I think the biggest issue with this game was the offensive play calling. BC was running the ball basically at will through Pitt's defense for pretty much the entire game, except in the second quarter when they just abandoned the run for no reason. And every time they stopped doing it, they pretty much always had a bad play. And there were multiple times where they were running and getting lots of yards and getting lots of yards. Then they would do something else and it would not work. And that's really what just doomed them because even at one point when I thought Thomas Castellanos was settling into a rhythm as a passer, I was typing out the tweet saying that, and he threw with the interception in the red zone.
Into double coverage.
Into double coverage, yes. And on the defensive side, playing a third string quarterback against one of the worst offenses in the ACC, if not the FBS. And Nate Yarnell looked like an all ACC quarterback. Pretty much did whatever he wanted. Some blown coverages, just terrible tackling in the game.
Oh, Mitch, I think we're losing you. Yep. Yeah, terrible tackling. There was issues on the defensive side with the secondary, guys being out of position. There was, you look at all the problems.
Sorry, I'm back.
All right, cool.
Go ahead. Plugged and then it muted. I didn't know I had to turn the mute off. But yeah, penalties were back. And defense just looked out of position a lot. They got some stops here and there. But I thought early in the game they did a good job of stymieing Pitt's run game, and then Pitt started breaking off some huge runs that got them out of that big touchdown run. There was the one that got them out of the shadow of their own end zone. And yeah, it was just a debacle. And you could kind of see it coming because it's just like, you keep seeing what's happening. Like every drive was the same. BC would run the ball a few times, they would get a bunch of yards, and then they would start trying to do other stuff, and it just would not work. Thomas Castellanos got bailed out by some crazy good catches. I'm not sure how much him getting pressured was on the offensive line because Dan Mullen's a great commentator because he was explaining the whole cage rush thing where Pitt was doing a good job of, they weren't rushing to sack Castellanos. They were just rushing to squeeze the pocket, and that worked a lot of the time. And then later on, Pitt was just sending the house, and because BC had to throw, they couldn't keep enough people in to pass protect, and that was forcing Castellanos out of the pocket. Yeah, it was just a terrible game.
So I feel like we're a little far away from why can't I even think of the Seinfeld? It's so late in the night. What's the holiday in Seinfeld?
Oh, Festivus.
Festivus, where airing of grievances. I want to look at some of the decisions that they were making, both coaching and players on the offensive side of the ball. And we kind of glazed over it a little bit, but glossed over it. But if I have to watch Thomas Castellanos, and we called it both the YOLO ball, where he just you're moving the ball effectively with Kai Robichaux. You're running 5 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards. And then he just goes back and hucks it up for 40 yards. In the play to Joseph Griffin, he had the wrong read. He was throwing it on the inside, and then Griffin was cutting. No, he was throwing the outside.
I think he thought he had Tomlin, who was running like a wheel fade to the outside, but he had Griffin on the deep post over the middle. And he
Right.
just floated it up to really nobody, and he was lucky that one didn't get picked too.
Right. So that's the thing with these passes too. They're not close to
No.
anyone week after week. So that it's partially on Castellanos because he needs to know better. I know it's college football, but like you got to be able to make some basic reads on that. Like just hucking it up is not the best idea. And some of it's on the coaching staff who honestly, like at some points when he does crap like that, bench him. Like you need to set an example. Like he needs to get it in his head that he can't do those types of things because it kills drives. Like as much as fun as we both talked about it. We've actually taken a little bit. We've hit the brakes on it. That Castellanos has made some big plays this year, but we're just watching as this year goes on. He's been more of the catalyst to get them off the field than anyone else on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's clearly just not processing what throws he needs to be making consistently enough. And when it isn't there, he's just making like the worst possible decision by, just floating these balls into coverage where they can be picked off easily. Still don't understand like this is like some. I mean, I think again, at one point I was like, okay, like he's kind of starting to get it. And I thought that BC's first drive it looked pretty good because they were had him do some screen passes. The one that got batted was a play action, which the guy was open. They just had two guys rushing from that side, so I like those plays. But then, in the second quarter, they just went throw all the time. And it's like, what are we doing? Like this is crazy.
Right. You have a strength on your offense. You're able to run the ball. Go with it. And you explain your meme that you used with Thanos.
Yeah. So BC Interruption tweeted running up the middle, yay! And I tweeted the Thanos meme after. Oh, what is it? I can't think of the quote. It's like after all of your failure, where has it brought you back to me? And I quoted that, or caption that was somewhere in College Station, because we're now finally on Steve Adazio's side and just saying, just run the ball up the middle every play. And in this game, pretty much every time they ran the ball up the middle, they got a lot of yards. And probably the times it didn't was when they brought in that, and it was successful sometimes, but later in the game, it started to not be as effective, was that jumbo package where they had 7 offensive linemen, a tight end and a fullback, and then Castellanos and Robichaux. And Pitt was like, okay, well, they're not going to pass out of that formation. And they tried to a few times, and they actually had some like a good quarterback design run kind of thing. But especially in the red zone, the defense just completely keyed on the run because nothing else was going to happen. So, and I think Mullen was saying it. He was like, listen, they can still run if they spread them out. And that's exactly what that's what I said going into this game because of how willing is Pitt, how aggressive Pitt plays and how they use their defense in terms of having base personnel. So yeah, I mean, it was crazy to watch the game because you just kept seeing them do the same thing over and over again. It's like, why are they just not committing to the run? And sometimes obviously, like if they would go on first, if they run on first down, they didn't get if they got like 1 yard or 0 yards, then they would immediately go to do something else. It's like, just keep running. It is going to break like every time. You just need to be more patient with it. And they just got too scared and went to the passing game, which was just too risky and wasn't working.
The explosive was there. There was at least, I counted at least 3 or 4 runs by Robichaux, and Dan Mullen brought it up, where there was like a safety like hanging onto his leg. And
when you design a run play, that's exactly what you want. You want him getting into the second level where it's him in a one-on-one situation with the safety. Now, Robichaux's not going to make many guys miss. He can run through some and get yards after contact, but you just keep doing that. And it was amazing. And they mentioned on the broadcast, he was, and I even said early in the game, they got to give Broom some more carries. So Robichaux's fresh for the fourth quarter, and he was as fresh as ever. He was getting, seemingly it was the opposite of diminishing returns. He was getting increasingly more yards as he was getting more carries because the defense was so tired of tackling him. So that was really frustrating. Again, penalties, and there weren't. It was the most they've had since the Louisville game. Actually, no, since technically Florida State, because they had 8, which is one more than Louisville. But they all just seem to come at the worst times. The scramble by Castellanos for a touchdown, the second one it was a real touchdown, but the penalty was there. There was the one where he tiptoed down the sidelines, and I think you could argue he got in, but BC also got gifted a touchdown to Lewis Bond in the most insane catch ruling I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like that. I don't think I will again. Like that, I think that was just a blatant missed call. The refs were, as I tweeted, on absolute heater tonight of just being awful. But again, it hurt both teams. It helped both teams, so it doesn't really matter. But it was just crazy watching how poorly they managed the game. Yeah, and then again, like BC had opportunities to win this game. You know, they get down to the red zone and Castellanos throws that pick. If they just keep running the ball, they get in the end zone there. I think on their last drive, they got into the red zone where they kicked the field goal. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how that developed. Oh, that they had the holding. That was the one.
Yeah, that was the Trapilo one.
That's a little tougher. But yeah, it's just really frustrating to see them not learn. And again, it was weird because in the first half they were super pass heavy, and then the second half they came out and were more run heavy. It's like, okay, they got it. They're just gonna keep running, and then they wouldn't. It's like, why? Just keep running. It's working. Just keep doing it. Like it's just really, really.
Yeah, they went on a 10-0 run, I think, at one point.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they just went right back again. So, anyways, we're gonna be back in a moment because that's just one part of the issue that went on today. We're gonna look at the defense, which is another major problem in this game. We'll get into that in just a second. Now, PrizePicks is one of the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season, and now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 more players across different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce get 10.5 3-pointers made and receptions. So this week, I'm thinking I'm going to take 2 picks. Stephon Curry scoring 29 points and Nikola Jokic scoring 10 rebounds or grabbing 10 rebounds. Excuse me. That's what I would pick. Now, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy, so if things happen, you're covered. It's the only place that does this. Now, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. And now we're going to talk about the defense, who had had a few moments there, but I feel like after watching some of those downs, the play that was emblematic of this whole thing was, and I'm not going to make an inappropriate joke, which I was thinking of doing, but I won't go there, was Kyrie Johnson making the most blatant targeting call I've ever seen in my life on a play that he launched himself with the crown of his head, like right into the guy's neck. It was horrible. And that just kind of was emblematic of, like, you just felt like that was what set up this whole thing. Like, you played against a second-time quarterback, only making a second start. You made him look all ACC. They had a offensive line that was one of the worst in the country, and Rodney Hammond ran for 160 yards.
And BC couldn't get a lick of pressure.
They couldn't get a lick of pressure. Yeah, it was the same. Guys out of place, guys missing tackles. It was just a complete cluster bleep of a defense, and it seems to be that's exactly who they are now.
Yeah, it was everything. This is the Stefan from SNL meme. This defense is everything, but it's terrible. It's clear that injuries are taking their toll on this team, but it's kind of that happens to every team, and you need to find a way to play through it, or suspensions, whatever. And yeah, I mean, BC just looked woefully unprepared out there. Guys just missing tackles in space. Again, I thought the defensive line played well in terms of run defense early on. Really didn't let Pitt get anything going, but Nate Yarnell was just dealing out there, picking apart the zone defense. He hit that spot route on the mesh concept like 3 times, and just guy was wide open. He had some running plays. I think those were just like, it's because the defense is crashing so hard on the run, which that's what they're being coached to do, because you don't think this guy's going to kill you as a rusher, and he converted a few first downs, so that's kind of sucks. And I think penalties were more a problem on the offense than the defense, but I mean, the holding on Amari Jackson took away the 1 sack they did have. And yeah, I mean, the Kyrie Johnson penalty, I mean, I think to BC's credit, I think that's their first targeting of the year. But I mean, that was just a ridiculous play. I mean, if college football ever does adopt the kind of like flagrant 1, flagrant 2 model that basketball has, that's going to be the textbook, like flagrant 2 targeting. Like that is what targeting, the penalty and ejection system is trying to eliminate, because that was reckless, stupid, malicious. I mean, I don't know, malicious, but just insane why he did that. And, he gets kicked out of the game, and then BC's down to their backup free safety and their starting strong safety who shouldn't be playing, period. And yeah, it was just more of the same. Eventually, they hold up against the run for a little bit, then they get gashed by some explosives. They can't get pressure, and guys are just struggling to stay in phase and coverage. So it's just
and you watch the film a lot. I don't know if you've noticed it. I noticed it a lot today. They get beat hard on misdirections and any sort of change in direction. Like if a guy, any sort of misdirection, it seems like they immediately bite on it, and they have real trouble staying, keeping their integrity on those types of plays. Like I think it was the Hammond touchdown. It was John Pupil.
He juked Amari Jackson out of his jock strap, and then Victor Nelson just couldn't make the play. And I think this is a problem with BC's defense in general. Maybe outside of the defensive line, because it's not as important there. But actually, it is somewhat a problem there as well. This team just lacks athleticism on defense, and that makes, when you make mistakes, you're out of position. You don't have the athleticism to recover. That's going to create problems. So that's why you see guys like John Pupil, Victor Nelson, Cole Batson, even Neto Ekpala, who has had a pretty decent year. Like, he misses a ton of tackles, and usually they're in the backfield and hits one-on-one, and he misses the tackle, and it goes for a big gain. Cam Arnold still misses a tackle here and there. Vidi DePalma, obviously an athletically limited player. He's smart. He knows what's going on. He just can't do anything about it because he's not fast enough. So, and I think part of the issue with that, again, with the linebackers, Jalen Black was out for the year. Bryce Steele's been out for the whole year. So you're lacking some athleticism there. But, when this team takes the field on defense, they are just so behind the eight ball in terms of athleticism that, as we saw, one of the worst, probably the worst offense in the ACC and one of the worst offenses in Power 5 was able to pretty much do whatever they wanted for most of this game.
And the lack of explosives on defense is what stands out to me too. And it kind of goes back to your speed. It's just, when you make a play here and there, a sack, you saw it with Pitt, right? When Pitt did it to Thomas Castellanos, it really messed up BC's offense, and they had to adjust their scheme. They had to fit in, and it got them off schedule. And I think you've said before, a sack is almost as good as a turnover at times, right?
Yeah, basically the likelihood that kills the drive is basically the equivalent of a turnover. Yeah.
So BC doesn't get any of that.
Even tackles for loss. And that's such a big part of this, is that they just don't create any tackles for loss. So then offenses, even if they do, and normally I'm like, if it's a 2 or 3 yard gain on first down and they run, I'm like, okay, it's fine. But the fact that they can never get a team into 2nd and 11, 2nd and 12, or even like on 2nd and 5, if they run and get them to 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, it feels like it's always 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, which is very convertible, even for mediocre offenses. And we talked about how this BC defense has been good against bad offenses, and Pitt's offense is turbo bad. And I think we just have to admit, BC's defense is turbo bad. I mean, they're just not getting anything done that helps this team win games.
So 0 sacks and 2 tackles for a loss that entire game. So in our final segment, Mitch and I are going to go over where do we go from here. BC sits at 6-5. I'll have some thoughts. Mitch might sit some of us out, but I'm gonna get into it. You're gonna want to hear my thoughts on this in just a moment. Now, I have to pick a player of the game for this. Oh boy, I'm gonna pick Liam Connor. Now, time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company.
Just give it to Nate Yarnell. I don't care.
Yeah, much like Liam Connor, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. So while BC was unable to do anything offensively, Liam Connor hit 3 field goals, 4 if you count the one that Jeff Hafley iced him on. Now, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good because they have 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden sours, and more for any type of palate. They're great tasting and award-winning, and they're always thinking of new things. The best thing about Athletic Brewing, it's no hangovers ever. You can find it anywhere, bars, in stores, and online. And now, first-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at Athletic Brewing. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all time. This is Locked On BC. AJ Black. Thank you all who are first-time listeners here checking this out. Hit that like and subscribe button. If we do this every day, we're the only Boston College podcast that talks about BC sports every day. I have something wrong with me, I think. I don't know. But to wrap this up, let's talk about where things go from here. BC had every opportunity to win their 7th game. We're now seeing that 5-game win streak wasn't much to talk about because other than maybe at Georgia Tech, you beat a bunch of bad teams. Where does BC go from here? They got to play Miami next. A team full of athletes, a team full of, I thought maybe, bringing them up north that BC would be playing tough. If you're playing an athletic team like Miami full of guys that, can run and burn, BC's going to get smoked. They're not anywhere near where Miami's going to be doing because you're going to get some points on some explosives. Thomas Castellanos is going to futz around again, and they're going to get blown out. So 6-6. That's what I'm seeing right now. Where do you go from here? Is this enough to keep the staff on? Will BC move on from Jeff Hafley? Blake James did not hire him. That was Martin Jarmond. Martin Jarmond loved Jeff Hafley. Not sure what Blake James thinks, but I can tell you from what I saw on the field this year, it hasn't been very impressive. There were flashes, but we have not seen consistent football under Jeff Hafley in the 4 years he's been here. I would not be surprised if he made a move, but it's Boston College. BC moves at the speed of a glacier. They're going to have to wait they might have to wait another year until everything falls apart before they decide to make a move. But I'm going to say this, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. That's my thoughts on that. Mitch, I know you don't want to talk about it, but Mitch, what are the things you're thinking about?
No, I'll change my mind. I'll talk about it. I think it's time to make a change.
Yep.
I think that you said that Hafley has not been coaching assistant football teams. I think it has been very consistent in that it is 6-6, like Adazi before him, probably worse. It's 6-6 every year. And I would say that in each of the seasons, when we get through October, things are usually pretty good. We think the team's hitting their stride, and then in November, everything falls apart. And I don't know why that is, but I think that's a consistent theme for the last few seasons. And I mean, again, 2022 you can kind of throw out, but I mean, this loss, this might be down there with the UConn game in terms of how embarrassing and inexcusable this is.
And NIU, you can throw that in there.
And NIU for sure. I think this is worse because NIU is actually a decent MAC team at least. Pitt is a bad ACC team by all measures, and now we know BC is as well. So, we're seeing that there's a significant issue with the recruiting right now. I think there's been a numerous misses in evaluation and who's getting the majority of snaps. So, just based on the results of how things are going, especially with next year with a much harder schedule, the results are not. I just can't see a path where there's the path again. I don't see a world where the results are better. There were plenty of opportunities for this team to finish strong, 8-4, 9-3, what have you. And again, I think we underestimated Virginia Tech. I feel pretty solid about my evaluation of Pitt. These were teams they should have beaten, or at least Virginia Tech should have been very competitive with. They got blown out, and then I don't think BC ever led in this game, and even if they did, it felt like Pitt was in control the entire time. So, I just think it's time to make a change. I just don't see a realistic path for things to get better with Jeff Hafley at the helm.
Yep, and I think folks are asking, will they wait? If you've been following college football right now, honestly, if BC's going to make a move, they should do it tomorrow. I'm not joking, because I was saying to Mitch, the way that the transfer portal works now, you want to have your new head coach in place when it opens up at the end of the season. You do not want to be in the midst of a coaching search and then trying to get guys to come in when you don't have anyone in place. So that's why you saw Mississippi State, Texas A&M. You're seeing all these coaches, rumors of Chip Kelly, all these things happening. If BC is serious about this, or if Blake James is going, this is what I want to do, this is the time to do it now. Don't wait till the Miami game. Do it now. Let Chud coach the last game or whoever and finish it out. I I wouldn't be surprised because but then it's BC, so we've had enough of things happen in our past that I could see them not being having the right foresight and screw that all up too.
I
But
just think the problem with that is going into next, like last year, you could say, okay, like we were really banged up, everything just broke against us. We can, we throw that year out, we move on, and like obviously BC is much better this year, but at the end of the day, like there hasn't been long-term growth with this program and this team, and I just don't see with the pieces on the roster now and how it's constructed and what's coming in with the recruiting class. I just don't see how it's going to change, how it's going to get better. And maybe that's short-sighted of me. Maybe I'm not being imaginative enough, but I just don't really see it.
right. And everything I've heard, you guys know I cover recruiting, is when we start winning more, well, you didn't win more. So like a guy like Henry Hasselback, who, I know that they're still going after, like he's going to look at you and go, oh, you're 6-6 BC. And Halfley's probably going to, if he's not here and gone this year, he's probably going to be gone next year. Why would I go there? You know what I mean? So it's like you're kind of stuck in neutral. My last thought, and we talked about him earlier, and I hate bringing him up because feel like we did at the beginning of, I used to do it all the time at the beginning of this podcast years and years ago, is I look at the schedule and people keep mentioning like, is Steve Adazio and Jeff Halfley the same? They're different in many senses, but I want to give Daz credit. The thing with Steve Adazio was he beat, other than Kansas was awful. But other than that, I felt like he beat every team that he should beat and then lost everybody else. So I wonder, and my thought is, I feel like a Daz would have gone 8-4 with this team. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Probably. I think this was definitely easier than many of the schedules he had during his time here. I think I don't disagree. I don't think there should be revisionist history and go back and say, oh, it was a mistake to fire him.
No,
he would have. I think that had run its course. I think the program is definitely stagnating, and I think we saw how he handled things at Colorado State in the following year. I think it would have been pretty bad for BC. So yeah, I think it's disappointing that things didn't work out better, but at the end of the day, this is a results-oriented business, and the results. And I still bristle a bit at like BC should always be winning like 9. Should be like, it's like the Tom O'Brien should always be that. It's like, well, I'm not sure that that's realistic. But where they are now is not acceptable for what Boston College football can and should be.
Especially when you have a golden goose in front of you, like the schedule. Like you can't get it to lay out any better than it did this year.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
like you said, like maybe next year is maybe if they win a few games, win some of these games going down the stretch, maybe next year they fire him anyways, but you at least have the momentum of, hey, we won a lot of our games down the stretch. You get a better recruiting class and you set the team up better. And next year things come crashing back to earth, and then you make a change, but it's already crashing to earth now. So it's time to move on.
All right, Mitch. Nice, fun way to end this episode. But I mean, we're going into this like with pretty depressing thoughts anyway. So let's wrap this up. Where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. We'll have a game rewatch. It's not going to be pretty.
You're not doing it 3 stars. I'm not letting.
I'm not doing it 3 stars. Absolutely not. My brain might break rewatching this game. But how about anyways? Then we'll be previewing Miami, which I'm sure is going to be a whole boatload of fun. So, but just keep your eyes on Eagle Insider. I think we do the best job covering BC football, even when it's at its lowest.
Yep. And if any news breaks, we'll have it there first. And as long as I'm not at my day job, I'll try to break. If anything happens, I'll get on Locked On as soon as I can. So follow us on any app that you have. My brain is complete mush now. Or follow us on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Thank you all so much. For all of you who are new, again, appreciate you for stopping by and spending some time with us. For all of you that are returners or everydayers, we love you. I see football fan Frankie Russell, Rob T, Marty Party, Len Suber, E Moneybags, Josh Dougherty. You guys are always out there. Thank you all so much for making Locked On BC your team every day.